Welcome to Two Dudes, One God Pod, and today, Pat and I have Paul Shafer. Paul Shafer is with us. I'm excited about this episode, and I'm excited to get to know a little bit about you, Paul. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Paul Shafer, and met you guys through our local church here, and man, you know, it's one of these things of like meeting people and get to know people, and the fact of outside of the church, I don't know if we would be friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, the brotherhood that this community has made, man, I consider both of you guys brothers. And
same.
I mean that.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I mean, my name is Paul Shafer, work in the oil and gas fields, but also I'm a part of this community that Pat and Trey are also a part of. And, you know, just very, very excited once both of you started this podcast. And this is the reason why, if you don't mind me telling the story, is we have a thing going on at our church called Freedom Weekend. And on our last Freedom Weekend, there's an event, or there's a portion of the Freedom Weekend that happens at the very, very end that's very impactful. And me and a gentleman by the name of Garrett Powell were a part of that. And Pat and Trey were outside, you know, just kind of hanging out, you know, during that last event that Garrett and I were putting on. And I was seeing how the both of you were interacting with one another as brothers, you know, because we're all brothers in this community. And I saw how y'all were interacting, and I thought in my mind how epic of a podcast it would be if both of you insane mother effers were to start a podcast. Yeah. And Trey, honestly, when you texted me and you're like, hey, I'm starting a podcast with Pat, before I replied back to you, I sent that screenshot to Garrett, and I said, look what God's doing right now. Absolutely. Look what God's doing right now. So I am super proud of both of you brothers, and I'm very excited to be on here. So thank y'all.
Well, yeah, it's definitely been a pretty busy thing. Like, you kind of get into the podcasting thing, and like you start scheduling like guests and everything like that, and you start to realize, whoa, like this is real man type stuff.
Bro, it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
and it is a lot of work. Yeah. I did podcast back in the early 2010s. That I had a podcast called The Story of Us. And it was all about telling people stories while I was in ministry. And it wasn't a Christian-based podcast. It was just telling people stories, you know, like having a coach on, telling about being a coach and what that impacted these kids' lives, or having a musician that I thought, man, it'd be really cool to have them on because I'm a fan, and they would come on. And we were under This American Life was the #1 storytelling podcast, and we were the #3 podcast on iTunes. And that's not saying anything boastful or anything, because podcasts weren't big in 2010.
Right, yeah.
You know? But if I would have stuck with it, who would have known, man? But at the same time, it was just telling people stories, kind of what we're doing right now. And so when Trey reached out to me and said, hey, I'm starting this podcast with Pat, just like in that Freedom Weekend talking with Garrett, I texted you and I said, I know that you're inviting guests, but I am telling you as my brother, I have to be on this thing. Like, I have to be on this thing.
You've been on the short list of people that we wanted. I mean, like, you were already on the list.
Thank you.
And I was telling Pat, I was like, Paul's like permanently on a podcast. Like, every time I talk to him, he's like, hey, how's it going? I was like, we got to have him
podcast mode.
And like, as I've gotten to know you a little more, we've kind of peeled some layers back. Like you said earlier, I don't know that we would be friends. Like, I don't know that that's true. Right. I play guitar. I was in a band. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we've played disc golf together. Yeah. And I think the same thing with Pat. Pat and I were talking too around Freedom Weekend, and I was telling him, like, when I go to the doctor's office and I go, hey, why did y'all charge me $60? My copay's $30. The lady's like, sir, please calm down. You know?
I'm just asking questions.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa. And so, like, I was telling Pat, like, man, people, and like we talked with David Wise about this a little bit, like, people just react. It's like I step on people's toes, and they just act a certain way.
Yeah.
I think people don't know how to take me, or people don't know how to take anybody.
Right.
Everybody's looking at the world through their own glasses. And like when I first met you, I was like, something's not, he's just a little too good. He's like figured out how to be nice to people, or, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I get that. I've gotten that as a musician, because I'm also a musician and play around East Texas a
Love
lot.
his shows. I highly recommend you go see a Paul Shafer show. I've enjoyed every single one of them that I've went to.
But during my wild days of not really caring what people thought and just really, just playing shows and everything, I've always felt that I've had the personality that I always have.
Yeah.
And that Trey, to your point, that was a lot of, I say a lot, there was one specific individual that books a lot around Tyler, Texas, and he goes, man, I feel like you're putting on like a persona every time I talk to you. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? And he was like, it feels like I'm in an interview almost. Or
That's
like
what I'm saying. Like,
you're being
intense.
on top. And I was just like, man, I think a lot of that comes from that's truly who I genuinely am.
Yeah.
Because I was raised in the church, and one of the things that my mom and dad always implied on me was to be more like Jesus.
Right.
And I know that sounds, cliche Sunday school answer, but the deal is, man, one thing that I love about Jesus is that he wanted to get to know people.
Yeah.
Like, he just wanted to spend time with them. And I feel like even in the life of growing up, even through high school, figuring myself out, all the way up to like current day, being nearly 40 years old and everything, I've always had that intact. Like, I genuinely, Trey, when I look at you and when I look at you, Pat, man, I want to know who you are.
Yeah.
I am intrigued by who you are. And now having this brotherhood, it's like, you know who I am as a genuine person, but I also know who y'all are, and we get to accept each other for who we are.
Yeah.
And that's when brotherhood happens.
Well, I think guys, we're naturally drawn to authenticity, and we're just usually suspect of other men that we meet. If we don't know them, if we haven't had a shared experience with them,
Right.
then we're like, what's this guy's angle? Like, what's he trying to do? I'm so grateful that we've all gotten to know each other, and I'm excited that whoever's listening, whoever this audience is, Pat, in the future or now, like, there's a couple of things I do know about you that I definitely want you to talk about.
Yeah.
And like, one of those is how you met your wife. And another one that I don't think I know a whole lot about yet is like, I want to hear about how fatherhood feels like for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you could give us a little bit of those two things.
Well, so diving into the first one, how I met my wife. So a little bit of backstory was, I'm like I said, I'm nearly 40 years old, first time married, first time having a kid.
When's your birthday?
February 24th.
Okay.
So I'll be 40 then.
I'm January 7 and I'll be 40 then.
Let's go. 2003, baby.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah,
03.
Yeah, I was the class of 03.
Y'all are old.
Hey, yo.
I would. We're gonna take a picture before we finish, and it'll be y'all look at the little picture on your whatever you're listening to this podcast on, and I just want y'all to think. How old do all three of us really look? I think we're pretty close. I think if you lined us up,
Pat.
right? I think we all
the mom.
Yeah, rode hard and hung up wet.
I think we'd all pass for mid-30s. We'd pass for mid-30s.
Hey, man, I'll take it, baby. Yeah. I'll take it because I still think I look like I'm 18.
Yeah, like every time I hear that y'all are 40, I'm like, holy crap.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's a compliment.
It is. Like, I never think of, like,
you.
I thought you were, like, around my age whenever we first met.
What is your age?
I'm 33.
Well, that's not a compliment. 33. I want to be 18, 24, baby.
I don't want to be 18
I'm kidding.
ever
I want to look
again.
that way. I want to look that way.
Never.
I don't know, dude.
Oh, my gosh. Well, hey, just meet my wife, that in a story in it is a story in itself because I grew up being in ministry. Like I said, my dad was a pastor and everything. And
what denomination?
Baptist, baby.
Southern Baptist?
Oh, no. ABA. So ABA
like an Oregon Baptist?
Well, Southern Baptist can be Oregon Baptist, but ABA is American Baptist Association.
Okay.
It's kind of a smaller, I would say a smaller like organization of Baptists. And here's the deal. Just a quick story. I know you asked me about how I met my wife.
No,
ABA. Let's get into that.
Here we go.
So my dad grew up as a hippie, like hippie, modified, long hair, played the guitar and everything. He felt called in the ministry back in the late 70s, and the pastor said, well, you got to preach. He's like, but I really love to do music. Like I've given my life to the Lord. I'm really No, you gotta preach. That's the way it is, because that's the ABA. You preach, you cut your hair, you wear suits, you're very conservative. That's the way it is. And so my dad became a preacher, and whenever I was a child, I have a brother who's 6 years older than me, and he grew up on Pearl Jam. Like any musical taste I have is because of my brother.
Yeah.
And Nirvana, Pearl Jam, all that scene. My dad, I don't know this for a fact, but I like to believe it. For the sake of the podcast, I'm going to say that it's true. There was a motive to get MTV off of cable. All right, because like back in the day, you could pay for a subscription to cable, but cable was like turning the dial on your TV. Right. You got extra channels, and in the community that we are part of, MTV was on there, and my dad, whether he did it or not, was a part of the culture that wanted to get MTV off a cable TV. That was the ABA. Like, absolutely not. That is sin, blah, 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 blah. And so that, the ABA church also was very, in the sense to where they sang hymns, they preached about fire and brimstone and all that stuff. My dad was the type of pastor that always kind of went against the grain on that. So I am very grateful for a father that trusted his spirit of how the Lord led. And even though he probably wished that he would have done music, he preached. And I think that was just the Lord's will on his life in that season, in that generation, because he preached amazing gospels. And so I grew up a pastor's kid. But the ABA was an organization that still exists to this day and probably still does really great work, but are very, very much conservative, in the box theology, Baptist vibes. All right. And so that's how I grew up. And then eventually, throughout my life of being raised in that, being raised with a father and a mother and a brother that had all these ways of like, man, we're going to listen. My dad had the cassette tape of Poison, had the cassette tape of the Doobie Brothers and all that we would listen to. And music was always a massive part of our lives because my dad was a musician, and my brother started playing the guitar, in late junior high, around 8th grade, freshman year. And I just thought that was the coolest freaking thing in the world, man, because my mom could play the piano a little bit. My dad could sing like a bird, and music, again, was always a part of our lives. And my dad had a 12-string Yamaha guitar in his closet. Cool. And so I remember being a little kid, like walking in there and just strumming that guitar, just picking it with my hands, not knowing chords or anything like that. Music was always relevant to my life. And it wasn't until my brother, this is before Chris Tomlin, this is before all the mainstream worship leading deals, or worship leading people that were mainstream, felt a calling to music. And of course, my dad as a pastor was like, abso-freaking-lutely, living vicariously through him, if you will. And my brother was able to have the opportunities to go to seminary and all these things of playing music for different churches. Well, me as a junior high kid, I picked up the guitar and learned G, C, D minor. And if you're a worship leader, you could play any song in those chords. But I started playing that, and my brother started taking me along with him to those events, those youth events that he would get booked at, because my brother's a very strategic and also go-getter type guy to find opportunities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I respect that about him, and I learned that a lot from him, to go find your opportunities. But he would just build relationships and networked really well, and he would lead worship at different churches, and that's when I had the opportunity to do that. So I did that, and then kind of started my own path, once my brother got married when I was around high school. And I started doing the exact same thing. So I had the incredible opportunity to lead worship all over the United States and, have a great time doing that and feeling called to do it all the way up to my senior year. then my senior year, through leading worship at an event, I met a gentleman that invited me to come to his church at First Baptist Athens, Texas, and say, hey, what are you going to do after high school? I was like, man, I have no idea, because I don't study. My grades are crap. My parents definitely don't make enough money to pay for my college just to do whatever I want. And I had no idea what to do. And he goes, well, why don't you come hang out with us at First Baptist Athens and lead worship for the youth group and the church, and we'll pay for your schooling at Trinity Valley College in Athens. I thought, awesome, cool. And so that's what I decided to do. So I did that. And after that, just kind of going through the typical 18 to 20-year-old, man, you don't know what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
You don't know what you want to do, but all you're doing, Trey and Bat, y'all probably experienced this being 18, 20 years old. I don't know. But I felt so much pressure. You've got to figure it out. Like, you've got to figure out what you want to do the rest of your life. Man, I had no clue. No clue. And so they paid for my school, and I kept dropping classes and sleeping in and saying I was going to school, but instead driving to Tyler from Athens to go to the movies, or Barnes and Noble to buy a new book, or whatever else like that. And I ended up, basically failing out to where the church was like, hey, man, we can't keep paying for your school because you only got like 4 hours in 2 years of what we paid for. And I thought, okay, that's a transition in my life. And so in that transition of my life, I moved back to where my parents lived, which is the Texarkana area, and worked at a music store. And through that music store of meeting different musicians, that's when I started playing at bars and like writing my own songs and really enjoying myself, but still having a foundation of faith, because I think in this conversation that we're going to have, the foundation of faith has always been planted in my life. You know, when you have a foundation of faith from parents or a family that plants that in your life at such a young age, it's always there, whether you want to get rid of it or not. Yeah. And so in my early 20s, I'm working at a music store in Texarkana. I'm really enjoying my life, meeting a lot of musicians and, playing around East Texas and stuff. There was a church that contacted me through my relationship with First Baptist Athens that said, hey, we're looking for an interim worship leader. And what that basically means is like an in-between guy until they hire somebody. And they reached out to me, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And they told me how much money they were going to pay me. And I was like, that's more money than I make working at this music store. So sign me up. Let's go. And so I did that for about 2 years. And long story short, fellas, I know I'm trying to get to how I met my wife. But basically, I led worship all the way up to that point. And then I decided to take another path to where I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. And that was basically date whoever I wanted to date, live a life of friends that I was a part of in my early 20s that were doing whatever they wanted to do. And I was jealous of that. So that could have been, having sex outside of marriage. That could have been drinking as much as you want to drink, because I was still living under a structure. Because even that foundation of having Jesus a part of my life, I was still under a structure of rules and regulations. And I wanted to escape from that. I wanted to be able to explore things that I didn't get to explore. Because I feel like when you're an early 20-year-old person, especially a guy, it's just designed in you to want to explore, But I had no coaching whatsoever what that looked like.
Well, I've got a question, Paul. Yeah. When were you saved? Was it early?
Yeah. So when I was 8 years old, the full story of how I came to know the Lord and gave my life to the Lord was in a situation to where I had began asking questions to my dad about getting baptized. And I began asking questions what that looked like and what it meant to give your life to Jesus, as being raised as a pastor's kid. And one thing that was so phenomenal about my dad was he did not give me those answers. He allowed me to explore as a child to find that answer for myself. Yep. And I remember like during our prayer time or after church on a Sunday morning, I would ask him questions, and he was like, keep asking those questions. Keep asking those questions. And there was a moment to where my dad as a pastor and an ABA pastor would preach around different revivals, and he preached a revival in Longview, Texas. And it just so happened my grandparents, my dad's parents, lived in Longview, Texas. And so that weekend we went over there and stayed the weekend with them while my dad preached. And our favorite, I'm telling you, fellas, our favorite Mexican food joint was Pancho's Mexican Buffet.
Oh yeah.
Raise the
Oh
flag.
yeah. Raise the flag,
Let's
buddy. Yeah,
freaking
dude.
go.
Yeah.
Let's there's only a few left in the Texas. There's one in Dallas, and my parents still to this day on our birthdays will say, "You want to go to Pancho's in Dallas?" That's how much we love Pancho's.
That's awesome.
And so, so the reason why I say that is because on that weekend, I came home early from that revival weekend, and my grandparents watched me, and my parents and my brother went to Pancho's Mexican Buffet without me, and I was pissed. So I found that out. And so the next day, my mom, being a loving mom, was like, I'll tell you what, tomorrow I'll take you to Cassoulet, which was our second favorite Mexican food restaurant. And I was like, cool. I was in the Cassoulet booth in Longview, Texas, which is about 45 minutes down the road, and I could take y'all to the exact booth of the story I'm about to tell you. So I'm sitting in the booth with my mom at 8 years old, and I look at my mom, and I say, I just felt this overwhelming presence on me, and I said, I'm ready to give my life to Jesus. And I told my mom that, and she was like, we need to go talk to your dad. Like immediately. Like, what is
Where's your father?
Right? But I'm telling you right now, the overwhelming presence of the Holy Spirit says, I want you to come. I want to be in a relationship with you, and you get this. And so I went home, went and talked to my dad, and I'll never forget, we were in my grandparents' bedroom, and my dad was crying. And I was like, why is my dad crying right now? I'm crying, he's crying. And he goes, so what does that mean to be in a relationship with Jesus? I said, because he forgave me of my sins, and I trusted him. And he goes, okay, well, we're going to pray together, and you're going to accept him in your heart. I said, okay, Dad, would you pray for me? He goes, no, you're going to pray. And my dad's crying, while he's saying this. And so in that moment, I prayed to accept Jesus. I could cry right now.
Yeah, I'm there.
There was a powerful moment to where at 8 years old, I said, Lord, I want you to come into my heart. And my dad got to baptize me and everything. And so that foundational has always been there, always been there. But to fast forward in my previous story is, when I got out of ministry and decided to take my own path to do whatever I wanted, I escaped all of that, and wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. And so during that time of doing whatever I wanted to do, that foundation was still there, but I was escaping, the consequences of my actions because I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do.
Yep.
And I did that all the way up until about 10 years. 10 freaking long years of just doing what I wanted to do. And I had good times and, all that stuff of doing whatever I wanted to do, traveling all over East Texas and playing music and, making some money and all that. But it wasn't until about 2022, 2023, was 2024? Yeah. So 2021, 2022, to where I was driving down the road hung over as hell and just wanting to come back to the Lord saying, I just want to be happy.
Yeah.
Like I'm in all these destructive relationships that I've created, making my, my own choices. I just want to be happy. And then that following Monday morning on September 23rd of 2022, that same overwhelming spirit of the Lord came over me as when I was 8 years old in that Cassoulet. He said, I'm ready for you to come home. I'm ready for you to come home. And the way to do that is to basically take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and trust me in all the other details. Yeah. And I said, you got it. And then 2 weeks later, I played a gig, first gig sober in 10 years.
How'd that go?
It was nerve-wracking because I remember leading up to it. When I say sober, I don't mean I was drunk, couldn't walk around, but at least a beer before the gig or something like that. But I got sober, started exercising, all this stuff like that. And so I was nervous, Trey. I was nervous as crap. And I went and played at TXM Tyler and played the gig. And it was a beautiful evening, played outside. And our brother Jim Kill was there with his wife, Michelle Kill. And they were having a good time, listening to music and everything. And they came up to me and Jim and Michelle introduced themselves and they said, where do you go to church? Do you ever do music in church? And I'm thinking as a former worship leader 10 years ago, crap, man, they know who I am.
Yeah.
Like, this sucks. But I said, I haven't played music at church in a long time. And they go, man, you're super talented. You should come to our church. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. I said, where do y'all go? Because I felt the Spirit taking care of myself spiritually. I need to find a community.
Yep.
I need to find a community to go back to church. And that's something that I had pushed off for a very long time. And they said, well, we go to Wilderness Church. And I was like, cool. And so to press pause on that story, a week prior, I was just surfing through Facebook, just brand new sober, brand new out of toxic relationships. And I came across a young lady's Facebook post. And for some reason, some video that she had posted or that was associated with her that was years behind of when it was tagged showed up, and I saw her singing. And I thought, man, it would be so cool in this new chapter of my life to associate myself with a woman that was a strong voice, like a strong presence, to like join forces to do something different. Like, that would be cool. And it happened to be Miranda Fagan. And so we were friends somehow on Facebook, and I might have been drunk one night and at her because I thought she was hot or whatever. Her claim to this day is like, no, I added you, but I don't know why. Who cares? You know, the point of the story is I sent her a message and I said, hey, my name is Paul, and I play around East Texas. I would love to sing with you sometime. And she read it within 5 minutes and didn't respond. All right. And
got left on red.
I was like, hey, man, no big deal. You know, whatever. Fast forward a week later, that's when I meet Jim and Michelle Kill at TXM Tyler. And they said, man, you should really come be a part of our church. Where y'all go to church? They go, Wilderness Church. Well, I had remembered when I messaged Miranda on her occupation, it said works at Wilderness Church. I didn't know the size of Wilderness Church because I come from a background of like working at First Baptist type churches, larger staffs. Maybe Miranda was a secretary or children's ministry. I didn't freaking know.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my gosh, do y'all know Miranda Fagan? And they said, she's our worship leader. And I thought, Holy Spirit's doing something right now.
Yeah.
Like doing something wild. And I said, oh my God, I just sent her a message like a couple of days ago to sing with me. And Michelle Kill was like, oh my God, y'all be perfect together. And I thought, holy crap. So fast forward, that following Sunday, Jim goes, we're not going to be there this Sunday because our kid plays sports and we're gone all the time. But you should come when we're back. I'm like, great. So I didn't go that following Sunday. And then the following week, Jim and I exchanged numbers. I texted Jim, and Jim said, hey, man, we're not going to be there again this Sunday. Our schedule's crazy. And now knowing Jim, his schedule's always freaking crazy.
Always wild.
But he said, but you should just go. And I was like, great. So I looked into it. And as y'all know, Wilderness is not a type of church that posts a lot on Facebook. You can't find their online service. There's no online service, you know. And I finally found where they have two different services, 9 and 11. So, well, I'm going to 9 because I guarantee ain't that many people going. And I just want to sneak in, sneak out. But I slept through that morning. And I was like, I'm going to 11. So I just beelined it at like 10:59, went in the back row and sat there. And I saw Miranda get up to lead worship with just her and Emma, you know, Emma that goes to church here.
Yeah.
And I say this with all due respect in the sense to where Emma was just a very simple guitar player, all right? And so it was Emma and Miranda up there leading worship when I'm used to bands and lights and blah, production. I wept the entire time that they led worship because I knew Miranda had a heart for the Lord, and I knew that Emma had a heart for the Lord, even, you know, with her guitar playing and Miranda singing. And I wept. And it was just like the Holy Spirit was just saying to me, you're home. Like, release all of that energy that you have about my bride of the church. Release all of that. Like, I'm doing something in you. Trust me. Continue to be obedient, you know? And so I wept the entire time. And after the fact, and then Travis, our pastor, got up to speak, and it was God dang, perfect. You know, I can't tell you what he preached on that Sunday, but I can tell you how I felt, and I felt home.
I mean, we can look it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we sure can.
Said September 2022?
Yeah.
Third Sunday?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm on it.
Yeah, please do it, because I would be interested to know, because I actually took notes of that sermon as well. But after the service, Miranda had since messaged me back, and she said, "Hey, Paul, yeah, I know I've kind of heard your name around East Texas. I think that would be fun, but I need to focus my life on the Lord right now." And that's what she told me.
Yeah.
Because Miranda had been going through several different things that were very similar to mine as far as relationships go. Just settling for somebody just because that's what you're supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. And she had just broken up with the gentleman, the same time I did with a woman. And so I approached Miranda in our lobby area and put my hand on her shoulder, and she turned around, gave me a big smile, and 2 weeks later, we had coffee with Travis on October 21st of that year. And the next week, I took her out on our first date. And October 21st of the next year, we got married.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
And then October 27th of the next year, we had our baby girl.
Yes, y'all did.
So the Lord has something in store for us for October, man.
Mm-hmm. What was the first worship song you learned?
On guitar?
Yeah.
Probably Lord, I Lift Your Name on High. Because it was GCD, baby.
GCD.
Yeah. I went from Lord, I Lift Your Name on High to I'm a picker, I'm a gambler, I'm a lover, I'm a sinner. Same chords.
Well, I'd like to speak to the worship service that Wilderness does. It's still that way. It's still usually very simple. Sometimes we'll get a piano player up there or something, but it's a very raw, uncut feel to it.
It's more worship than it is a show.
Yes, and that's something that really impressed me as well, because I've been involved with ministries that have the smoke shows, the lights, and all that kind of stuff, and I'll still listen to their music and stuff like that. But as far as that intimacy goes, I think that what we really have at Wilderness is something that creates a inner room, for you to be comfortable in and to worship the Lord. And, obviously, you're one of our worship leaders, and you do a wonderful, wonderful job at leading worship. And
Thank you,
I just want to affirm you and Miranda. She's freaking world class.
She's 18, baby.
Dude, she is amazing. We got very blessed to have Miranda leading as well.
And I know this isn't like a Wilderness podcast, but
Right.
at the same time, I think I really think that just to make it relevant here, it's the fact that where it's all about our community.
Yeah.
It's not about like the presentation. It's
Right.
just, man, legitimately Sunday mornings are the opportunity for us to gather together as a community to where that smoke show and all that stuff, that don't matter because we get to worship the Lord together. Yeah. And we all know through our community, like Trey, Pat, myself, we know what's going on with each other's lives.
Yeah, we live life together.
So where if like the worship leader sing How Great Is Our God to a brand new worship song, we're worshiping together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. And that's what attracted me to Wilderness, to keep me to stick. It wasn't dating Miranda.
Right.
It was the community of brotherhood. It really wasn't, Trey, because here's the deal. Once Miranda and I started dating, all of the men in the church, including Miranda's brother Chance, they were kind, but they were at the same time like, dude, you got to put in the work.
Yeah, they were going to vet you up here.
You got to put in the work. Yeah. And putting in the work is like, how vulnerable are you willing to be? Because this is a community of vulnerability. Like, are you a part of this brotherhood or not? It's not a cult. It sounds like a cult when you talk about it. But the bottom line is like, dude, we're in this. So, until you're willing to show investment, we're,
a little reserved.
We'll say hi, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until that first Freedom Weekend.
Dude, at Thanksgiving this year, my family's place, I've got a cousin, my cousin's kid, big duck hunter. We want him to come here, like he would fit here, but we're not going to get him until after duck season because
right.
He's in open water somewhere.
Sure.
Somebody asked me, I think one of my cousins asked me, like, hey, is there a bunch of mid-20s girls, single girls up there at your church? And I thought about it for a second. I said, you'd have to ask Michelle, my wife. I don't know if there's any single women in our church.
Right.
Pretty special place here.
Yeah,
and the men all get it. You know, like I could, if you called me one day, you were like, "Hey man, are you busy? I think Miranda's battery's dead in her car." Like,
and I did that.
Yeah, and
I did that, Trey.
And I would do the same thing. So like to me, that was huge. That was like, hey, another man trusts me to go help his wife. And
backstory to that is that Miranda did hair with her mother at the whatever the nursing home is close to your community that you live in. And Miranda called me. I was in Longview working, and she goes, "My battery died." And that was the only thing a woman told me. I didn't know what that entailed. And I thought, and so I instantly thought, well, it's going to take me about 45 to 50 minutes to get there. I'm just going to call my brother Trey because I have a relationship with him, and I trust him. And I called you, and I said, "Hey, Miranda's battery has died. You mind helping her out before I can get there?" And you said, "Absolutely. I'm on my way." Then I found out it was her, like, car door battery.
I was backing out of the driveway. You called me back. He was like,
"Hey, bro,
it's all good.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. We called AAA for a car door battery. It's fine." But anyway, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, but I'm telling you the truth when I say that, Miranda's a part of that story because I think that's how God designed it and in some ways rewarded me for my obedience. But man, I would have been a part of Wilderness regardless.
Yeah.
You know, I think that Miranda was a gateway into that to where God just, sprinkled icing on the cake. But it wasn't until Travis, our pastor, invited me to be part of Freedom Weekend that I was very reserved about through my past experience to where I got this brotherhood's, vulnerability without going into details to where I felt the freedom to say, y'all can hate me, y'all can love me, y'all can think I'm weird, whatever, but this is my life. And then it was accepted after the fact where again, I could sit across the table and look at both of you guys. Regardless, I know I made the joke that, well, we wouldn't be friends if we didn't go through that together. And you're right, Trey, we probably would have been, but I wouldn't be the man who I am now.
Right.
I would.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that we're able to equip each other, not enable each other. Because I refuse to enable either one of you.
Yeah.
I accept the burden and also the privilege to equip both of you, as I know that y'all have done the same with me. Because if that was kind of one of the deals during the dark sides of my life of doing whatever I wanted to do. I hung out with enablers. I hung out with people that wanted to go to the bar at happy hour at 4 p.m. and I took off work early to go, and I would stay until 10 p.m., drive home drunk, and then text other enablers, "Y'all want to come over and party?" And they were like, "Yeah, of course." And this is Tuesday night.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm a single dude who gives a crap, There was nobody looking out for my best interest that was outside of my family because they weren't equipping me. They were enabling me. You guys, if I were to text y'all that, you're probably like, "Okay, cool." I'll meet you here. But then if y'all saw me being a drunk fiasco, I would know without a doubt of y'all putting y'all's arm around me and say, "You need to get your shit together." Like, what are you doing?
Right.
You're coming home with me, Like, what's going on? It's equipping and enabling is the season for the last 3 years that I've been in. I hang out with equippers, not enablers.
Well, Chance said something a week or two ago. I heard him, your brother-in-law. Right?
Yeah.
He said, "Come as you are, but don't stay that way."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good synopsis of Wilderness. But it really is. It's not gay. It's not Diddy or anything over here.
No Diddy.
But it's really authentic. And I've been a part of a bunch of churches. I grew up in Green Acres. I've been to a bunch of different churches. I was really a member at Cross Brand. I would say a member. I don't know. I didn't fill out a form.
Which was a cowboy type
It's a cowboy
thing.
church.
Yeah.
And, it's the Six Flags over Jesus for cowboy churches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I've been to 2 big production churches, and I've been involved in small groups in both of them. But what we have at Wilderness is special.
And I think what we have at Wilderness is designed for people and men specifically like us. It's not designed for everybody. But, places like Cross Brand and First Baptist Athens, First Baptist wherever, they're designed, that's a community for people to draw closer to the Lord.
Sure.
And I think that that's the beautiful thing that I started learning when I disassociated myself being a worship leader for so long and being at different churches and doing that was, I thought, well, this place is this place is that. Man, it's a community. It's a community.
And there's a lot of expectation put on leadership. You know, like if you're involved in worship, like, dude, you know, people are watching.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching.
Yeah.
And Cross Brand was great. I went to SPAR. I went to their boot camp. I was involved in that. And when I met my wife and started dating her, I took her to Cross Brand. And we had dated long distance. She was in Kansas City, Kansas.
Wow.
Overland Park. And I remember telling her, hey, you know, she had decided to move to Tyler. I'm like, cool. And she said, on Sundays, I clean the house. I said, you do whatever you want to do after we get home from church.
Yeah.
And she goes, I don't go to church. And we just sat in silence for like an hour. And I called Travis. I was going to Cross Brand. I called Travis. I said, hey, I really need to talk to you because I didn't want to talk to Paul Roberts. I didn't want to talk to anybody from Cross Brand because I felt like they would say, hey, you're unequally yoked. You know, don't do this. So I came on a Wednesday morning and I spilled it to Travis for 30 minutes in front of 3 guys I didn't know or something, you know?
Right.
And he was like, I think your girlfriend is attracted to your faith. So she moved here and we went to Cross Brand. We didn't come here.
Yeah.
And we'd get in the car when we got done and she didn't have anything to say. I'm like, what do you think about the sermon? She's like, And so I saw that this was going to be a struggle. So I said, you know what? This Sunday we're going to go to Wilderness. And we've never left.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we get in the car, she's like, man, Travis was saying this. And right now she's going through the book of Luke with Dallas.
Come on, man.
Yeah. She's reading it. I've read it with her. She's on chapter 4 tonight.
That's my favorite gospel in the Bible.
Yo, dude. And it's so logical. Favorite. It's like,
because Luke was the logical one, out of that, from my understanding.
Yeah.
But also, too, you went to a cowboy church. Now you come to Wilderness, and we accept you for wearing your medium tank tops.
Yep.
Yeah. Mediums.
Extra mediums.
Out of everybody at this place, in this community that gives me crap about gaining weight, being a husband and a dad, it's Trey. But Trey still wears his medium tank tops.
Like, look, if I don't like you, I'm not going to make fun of you.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
You got to. And but this place is wild, dude.
Yeah,
this is
wild.
Absolutely wild. I didn't fit in at a cowboy church.
Right.
I just went because, here's what I figured out. If you're hanging around a bunch of believers, you're in community with people that believe in God.
That's right.
And you're going to get some good direction.
It's all about the community, man.
And I really think that's the beauty of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Because it's been something that's been on earth since Jesus left. I mean, it began at Pentecost and everything like that. And this is the creator of the universe.
Oh, without question.
The one who created us, who created the cultures, or created us and the cultures developed, and knows how to speak to his people. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the church has always been right by any means, but there's always been a remnant.
Yeah.
There's always been something there that God speaks to. And I think it's the most amazing tool on earth to be used supernaturally to experience relationships, like 3 people in a room who have completely different backgrounds, who can all come together and have that commonality of what Jesus has done for us.
Yeah, but it's crazy. Like, what does it say? The Bible says the devil came to steal, kill, and destroy.
Absolutely, man.
And so I don't think that's what he does to us. I don't think that's what he does to men. I think he came to isolate men. And so I realized that a long time in my life, I led a life of isolation. It didn't look like it because I'm kind of extroverted and I talk to a lot of people, but I was isolated.
Yeah, and that's that deal, Trey, that I was talking about in that 10 years. I was social as all get out, like hanging out at all the cool places.
You could be alone in a room full of friends.
That's right, but at the same time, could hit on every woman there. Could be everybody's best friends. Could do everything, but I wanted to be alone. I wanted to isolate myself.
What's exhausting?
It's very exhausting,
and it's painful. Then people care about you. That's like the worst nightmare for somebody that's godless.
Yeah.
It's like somebody would actually care about them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and then too, the one thing that I feel like, Satan continually whispers in our ear. Because one thing that I've been just dealing with in Scripture is, the book of Revelation talks about, in Revelation 12, about the dragon and the serpent and the dragon attacking the woman. And the ideal of that is that unless that we face that our enemy is the size of a dragon that's intimidating, that can destroy us, we also have to accept since the beginning of time that he's formed himself into a serpent that whispers in our ear and deceives us. And I feel like as men, what deceives us and whispers in our ear is to say, you don't need that. You don't need that. You don't need that community. You don't need that. They're thinking they're going to take advantage of you, the blah, 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 blah. You want to be alone, no matter how socially you are outside of that, because we all thrive for community. It don't matter who you are, you thrive off of it, whether you're outgoing or not. But the enemy wants us to be alone to attack us and just to make us realize that we don't need that. But in order for us to survive, and Trey, you asked me about what it's like being a dad. One thing that I realized being a dad, with our daughter being born in October and Miranda and I having a kid, is that there's a lot of mandatory isolation due to my wife and I needing to take care of our daughter, And through that isolation of taking care of our daughter and being responsible, man, I feel like there's different chapters in my relationship with my wife who I would die for, that I know is God-given to me through the story I just told y'all, But even dating to where we got engaged, there was an obstacle of attack. There was an obstacle of attack once we got married. Man, it ain't nothing compared about being co-parents to this little girl. It's just been nonstop attacking of how we treat each other. But thank the Lord that there's foundation of Jesus, because my wife gives me so much grace. So much grace. Man, I will even be vulnerable with you guys because we're brothers, and I know we're recording this, but who cares? But the fact of the matter is that, Miranda has been telling me for the last 3 nights, I feel like you just want to fight. And the deal is that my job's been chaos since my daughter's been born. I come home, I'm trying to figure it out, all that stuff. And, we're picking at each other, and then picking turns into insulting each other and stuff, to where my wife has told me 2 or 3 nights in a row, I feel like you just want to fight. I just feel like you just are trying to make me mad. And the next morning, my wife hugs me and kisses me and tells me, I love you and have a great day. That is the grace of Jesus, fellas. That is the foundation of Jesus. Because if we didn't have the foundation of Jesus in our lives, just like I do for my wife, it would be turmoil. It would be isolation. It would be I don't want nothing to do with you. You don't know anything about being a mother. You think I don't know anything about being a father while we're figuring this out. Isolation. But instead, it's the foundation of Jesus of, me waking up this morning, my wife giving me a big old kiss saying, I love you, have a great day. Me coming home from work and saying, I am so proud of you for doing this. That is the foundation of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
I'm serious, man. It really is. And that's something that's more power. That seems simple, fellas. You go through counseling and they're or watch a YouTube video and they're to do this is what you need to do. Well, you're telling me to do this. I don't want to do it. But that's where the grace of Jesus comes in to say, this is the natural flow. This is what you do.
And it's also an opportunity for us to change. Because that's like Chance says, it's you can come here but don't stay here the same type thing. And that's what Jesus does to you is he puts you into a position, and your heart into a position to where you can make little changes here and there. And those little changes that you make over the course of a year, you look back, that's a big change. Massive change to get ourselves into a position where we look back on our past and say, okay, I remember this is what I was. I may have liked myself in the moment, but looking back, I really didn't like myself. But now I can say I'm a completely different person.
Well, Trey and Pat, our brotherhood and the dynamic of personalities that we all three have, you think about this in the sense to where not just church, but community, come as you are. Man, I'm attracted to that. Come as you are. And just like you were talking about my brother-in-law, Chance, which I hate that you are giving him so much freaking credit. But at the same time, the man knows what he's talking about when it comes to that, and that's awesome. But the deal is, too, what God's teaching me in our community that we are part of, man, come as you are. but leave with the blood of Jesus. Like, leave with being surrounded by his salvation that allows you to attract people to come as you are. But our goal is for you to leave telling more people how good Jesus is, you know?
And really to build on that foundation and to dive deeper in understanding on what it is that Jesus did. Because that's, you know, I haven't been to check in the last few weeks, I think it's been like 3 weeks, but, you know, getting to discuss the word,
right,
and to dive deeper on what it is that is on our hearts, what it is that Jesus said, and you know, when you were talking about the book of Luke and everything like that, like going back and seeing, I was actually listening to Luke today,
awesome,
and hearing like his interpretation of history at the time, and going back and listening to the people and doing the interviews and getting all these perspectives on what it is that Jesus actually did. And whenever you go back and you read that and you're like, oh, Christians do have a faith. They do have a foundation to stand on, because we can still see that this place, this person who was in charge of this area. And whenever we're able to look back on that, it's encouraging in faith, but also we're able to discuss it as a whole, and really build that foundation together and build an experience together, and be like, oh, well, these several people were all here at the same time, and we had the same revelation and foundation on what Jesus's truth is.
Well, you know, and too, Trey, you know, like the book of Luke, I'm not a theologian by any stretch of the imagination.
Me neither.
But this is just an open conversation, you know, podcast. From my understanding, I'm so attracted to the book of Luke because I want to say it's the shortest gospel, but at the same time, Luke, as you were saying, Pat, Luke was the most, again, I'm not a theologian, somebody could prove me wrong, but was the most educated out of the four of the Gospels. And it's very, like, to the point. It's very, but I love hearing the stories of Jesus through Luke's lens,
and,
you know?
And it's an interesting story about the book of Luke. So Luke and Acts were both written by Luke, who was a physician, who was a disciple of Jesus under Paul. And so Paul was imprisoned, right? Oh, yeah, that's your name. Your name is Paul.
That's right, baby.
Paul was imprisoned, and basically he was on house arrest, and they said, all right, well, what's your motive? Like, what are you doing in all this? And he's like, I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. And they're like, okay, who's Jesus? And so Luke was a Roman citizen who actually went to Israel while Paul was on house arrest. And this was over a course of like 5 to 8 years in this time. He went and he got all the firsthand accounts of what people saw Jesus do.
Wow, could you imagine?
Right, going and just going and talking to those people.
A well-educated man that's getting accounts of who had like these experiences with,
who had access to Jesus,
of who he's heard about and everything, and then he's talking to people and he's like, what?
And then so he sent that document to Rome, and that was essentially Paul's case of who it is that I serve.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, well, why are you here? What have you been doing? And then that's when Luke took his document and essentially built everything that Paul had done from the very beginning, because he was also in the beginning with the stoning of Stephen. And it just kept unfolding, and it probably was wanting to be said that it was the acts of Paul, but actually by Paul doing this, it was the acts of the church, because you got all the people, you got all the names, you got everybody in around Paul and all of his people. And then that document was sent to Rome on Paul's behalf to basically defend him in court, essentially. And so, like, that's the kind of stuff that like I like to get into is like how
my wife's gonna love this, because she's asked some questions. I think you possibly just answered some,
because these documents, like, they're not just like randomly pulled out from thin air.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why I love Luke so much, is because of the education that was behind that. And then from what you're sharing, Pat, to have this conversation is the sense to where he went around to get, accounts of people that have interacted with this man.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap, man. Because, you think about it, fellas, like in the sense to where, I told you all about, it was because the fact that my family went to Ponchos without me. I was at Castle Lay with my mother, and the Holy Spirit overwhelmed me.
Mm-hmm.
That's an account of Jesus.
Yep.
It's the account of Jesus on a Monday morning being in my home office and saying that I need to figure this out. I need to whatever. And then the overwhelming Spirit of Jesus on that Monday morning in my home office saying, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, you got this. Take care of yourself. It's like, man, I heard the voice of God. That's what I'm going to do. This is the voice of Jesus being right next to me. Absolutely. And here we are right now doing this podcast,
Yeah.
The accounts of Jesus are still real to this day, and it's one of those things to where when we get to share that, with a brotherhood or a sisterhood or a community, I guess you could say, that's when we need to start listening. Because whenever you're doing life with somebody and know the BS like Trey, you talking about, when I first met you, man, I feel like I was on a podcast interview. Well, now you know my heart. We play Frisbee golf and you see how bad I suck at it.
Well, I just like talking to you. And I've got a superpower that I like talking.
Yeah.
So it's funny. It's very funny. But like sales calls, people will call me and I'm in sales and I'll just start talking to them and they'll go, hey, I've got to go.
Yeah.
And I haven't bought anything, so good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like on Sunday mornings, it's busy. Like you're going to lead worship and I'm like, hey, let me tell you about all this other stuff, and you're like, hey, this is a good story, but I got to
go. Whatever. I want to hear it, man. I was like, what time is it?
But I've got a couple of questions. My first question is, have you and Miranda gone through the Love and Respect workshop?
No.
Bro.
Tell me about it.
Valentine's Day weekend, Friday night, Saturday day. I'm like recruiting for this deal. I've got Colby and his fiance. I've asked them to come, and I think they're going to go, and I think Pat's going to go.
Yeah, I'm going to go.
One of the highest level things I've ever done for any relationship, anything. Like I was a counselor. I'm not now. Just want to say for
legal
liability reasons, I'm not a counselor, but I've been involved with a lot of things, relationship building, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The Love and Respect workshop and the book Love and Respect is great. I don't know if you read it or whatever.
No.
Okay, I'm listening to it again right now because I'm so hyped. I almost want to go again. I wonder if they let Michelle and I don't know. Anyway, Michelle and I went to this Love and Respect workshop. It'll be at Cross Brand. Paul Roberts puts it on. It is such an amazing deal. And I think, going back to like what you were sharing earlier about having a baby, all the changes, it's dramatic.
Yeah,
like,
man.
Baby shows up, your life is different forever.
Well, both of you guys are dads.
Yeah.
And even though it may be different stories of, how we became a dad, the deal is that, for my and Miranda's relationship, this was the plan, and we even prayed about it once we became married. February would be ideal. Like, Lord, we're praying for your hand to work in February and sure enough, February we got pregnant, and then October we had a kid. And I don't give a crap. Like, I'm very grateful of the people that have shared like advice and YouTube videos and everything. There's nothing that's going to prepare you for your child.
Yeah,
nothing.
No, you're never prepared.
And
there's not a book, nothing.
My daughter, whose name's Stevie June, is phenomenal, amazing. Like, such God moments when I get to like stay up at night and help her go to sleep or feed her while Miranda sleeps. But man, dude, it is something of a different atmosphere. Like, yeah, your love for that child is different, but your life is just a completely different atmosphere.
Does it give you any different perspective on God's love for you now?
Man, so if I could be completely vulnerable, I don't know if I've been able to grasp that yet.
Yeah.
Just to be completely vulnerable, because you hear these stories like, man, when you see your child for the first time, you have this overwhelming love, and you feel like
but they can kind of like hype that up and make you feel like maybe something's wrong with you because you don't have the same, like, for me, it was somewhere around 6 or 7 months old, and she was just crying, screaming, inconsolable, wouldn't go down, wouldn't take a bottle, didn't need a change, didn't need to be burped, and I didn't know what to do. And like 4 hours into that one night, I was like, God help me. And she just started laughing.
Yeah.
And I went, Okay.
See that, Trey, I'm glad you said that, because that's the kind of moments I'm having.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of moments I'm having, especially since I went back to work, what's been hellacious, because I want to quit my job and just live with my family. But it's like, who's going to pay the bills? But it's like when I come home from work, like Trey, Pat, like here's the reality of it. When I went back to work, I didn't know what kind of energy I was going to have to be able to give my daughter, because my work's been going through hellacious things the week my daughter was born. It's been pretty smooth sailing to where I could go play Frisbee golf with you in the middle of the day, or I could, go have lunch, a 3-hour lunch or something like that, because things were maintained. The week my daughter was born, all hell broke loose for some godforsaken reason. I don't know.
Election year.
Well, that, but at the same time, I think it was just Satan getting a hold of my mind of saying, you got to be in control. You got to fix this. You got to do this. You got to do this. But with all that said, it's these moments of like what you were saying, Trey, of me coming home from work. I was so scared when I went back. Am I going to have enough energy to be there for my wife? Am I going to have enough energy to be there for my kid? That's where I've seen the love of God show up.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like I step through my door. Yes, my wife is like, it's your turn. It's all this stuff, and I'm still transitioning my mind, from the chaos of my work. But dude, I'm telling you, when I hold my Stevie June, whether she's screaming to the top of her lungs, or she's asleep, or she's happy, that's where the love of God shows up.
Yep.
Because there is nothing more that I could explain of the connection I have with my daughter in that moment, to where my job does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
My things that I want to do, what time I'm going to be able to go to bed, what are we going to eat for dinner, what's our financial status look like, none of that matters. Like, all of that's gone.
Dude,
all that's gone.
Things are things, and stuff is stuff.
It's gone, Trey.
And like I would, dude, as long as I have my family, like, I would be homeless. I don't care. None of that stuff matters.
Gone.
Work doesn't matter.
Well, in transitioning, as a dad, these are questions that, Miranda and I are asking each other to say, does this mean that in order for us to spend more time together, because obviously my energy is going a lot towards my job and my career because of the money and the intake, and I'm very grateful, because I never thought that I would be in the position that I'm in with what I've been making. And then I've been single for such a long time. I didn't get married till I was 38, and used to that lifestyle and my accomplishments, quote unquote, of making this lifestyle. But now, with Stevie being a part of the picture of being a father, it's like none of that matters, man. And it's like we're having a conversation about what does that look like to possibly downgrade and to maybe give more investment into time to allow us to spend more time together, even though the finances aren't there, but we're able to just spend time together, more.
That's the reason you have the job.
That's right,
so that
baby.
you can support the family.
That's right, man. And I don't know where maybe you guys can give some insight to me on this as to where did it come from, to where, like, when did this shift happen, or has it always been happening to where it's like slave yourself to a job to make as much money as you possibly can make?
It's the American dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
So, but when did you think that started?
There's
happening?
a book. I've got a book called The First Mortgage. It was given to me by a woman. And I'm going to be real honest, I've never read the book. But I have read The Creature from Jekyll Island. And I have watched, what the feminist movement did, what women's suffrage did. And I have watched the powers that be, the dark powers of the universe, the Rothschilds and such, situate things so that children go to school, women go to work, and it's divided the family. And I think that's a demonic presence and spirit in our world.
Good word. Yeah. Good word.
And
because you know what's been whispered in my ear as a new dad is, man, I've had a conversation with my mother-in-law about this and stuff, and even seeing my mom and dad in that generation. It's none of their faults, but just how they're raised is that the mother takes care of the child, the dad goes to work, all that stuff. To where I'll be walking around the kitchen with my daughter right after work. My wife is getting a breather, whether it's looking at her phone or, microwaving some food or taking a nap or watching another episode of Friends. And I'm thinking in my mind, shit, I wish it was the 1960s again. Like, to where it's like I could come home, fix myself a cocktail, you're taking care of the baby. And what you just said, Trey, was basically like how Satan's whispering in my ear. This is how it's supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to be. You should resent your wife. You should give her attitudes because this is how it's supposed to be, you know? And that's just not the case of 2024 and what God's doing in our generation and also in our world right now. That's just not not the case.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I'm pretty jealous of you. You know, my story didn't go like yours. I didn't have a kid after I got married. I had a kid before I got married, and then that relationship had all but ended before I even knew she was pregnant. And we tried to make it work, and she left at like 4 months, something like that. And the time that you're getting with Stevie now, like, I missed a lot of that, dude. I got, like, first, third, and fifth weekends. And I had to work on the weekends, So, like, I got, like, dinner and, I had to drive to Dallas and back or Denton and back and Midlothian and back. I had to make drives to get my kid. The fact that you get to go home and your wife and daughter are there, dude. Like, God bless you, dude.
Yeah.
That is such amazing. A huge deal. And I really, 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 really want you and Miranda to go to this love and respect workshop, dude. I promise you it'll be the craziest thing you've ever done. And she'll love it. You'll love it, too. It's super high level.
Well, I can say this, and whatever it means. Again, I feel like people think I blow smoke, but Trey, is how passionate you are about this. You need to take a wave. You need to lead the wave of inviting people to this.
Absolutely.
You need to take the lead on it because, man, anything that you tell me what to do through our relationship, I'm gonna want to do.
Yeah.
Just like you too, Pat. Like anything that you tell me that I need to do, I'm gonna take more credit into that than seeing a YouTube commercial on it or something. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So just keep. Whether this love and relationship thing that you're talking about, man, just keep pounding the pulse of this is what needs to be done, and I will continue to listen to you to make that happen.
Well, like
just like this podcast,
100%.
Because like even like I could have had the excuse, man, I got a newborn, guys. Work's been crazy, whatever. Man, I wanted to do this because when y'all said y'all were starting a podcast, I was like, please, for the love of God, let me be a guest. I want to support this because you boys right now are like, oh my God, y'all are killing it.
I do want to take the time to, let me stop that. I do want to take the time to thank Miranda for letting us borrow you for a couple hours on a Thursday night. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, thank y'all.
I hope they're doing something fun.
They're coming this Sunday to church.
Finally. Yes. Dude, I've been like, where's this baby? They're hiding.
Are they hiding?
They might have 11 fingers. I don't know.
Is it ugly or what?
I've seen pictures.
She might, man. I've been too tired to count her fingers.
Bro, so you were there for the delivery?
Yeah, man. So the delivery
at the hospital? Or
yeah,
the hospital?
Man. So like that was on a Sunday to where Stevie was born on her due date.
No way.
Yeah, man. No help. It was just natural. It's crazy, and that's exactly what Miranda wanted. So yeah, 3 a.m. Because here's a little backstory too. My wife and I did not sleep in the same room for like a month while she was pregnant.
What?
Because dude, and it sucked because Miranda was too concerned, with my well-being. She didn't want to wake me up, which, I don't care, but I'm a grump when I sleep anyway.
Really?
But it's not like I was beating my wife or anything. Like she was just like, it makes me feel more comfortable like sleeping in another room because I'm moving around and I want to be able to move around, not think that I'm waking you up, all that. So it was a month. But then in that last like 2 nights, I can tell like Miranda was wanting to be closer and closer to me and stuff. And I'll never forget, it was like 3 a.m. and she woke me up. She goes, I think it's happening. And I was like, okay. And she goes, let's just lay here together and I just want to see how it goes. 15 minutes later, she goes, I think it's happening. It's like, let's go.
Yep.
So we went to the emergency room at 3:30, or emergency room, whatever it's called, 3:30 a.m. And then at 5, God, she's going to kill me if I don't know this, but it was like 5:30 p.m. Stevie was born.
Wow.
And
that's a long
on her
day,
due
brother.
date. It was a long day, but that's part of the process,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like what you see on a TV show, like, my water broke, it's on the way, and then you get to the hospital and it's like, okay, applause,
It was for me, bro.
Was it really?
Was for
Tell
me.
me your story
Yeah.
then.
So I don't know how to say that.
You had sex?
Yeah, we had sex.
Had the sex?
We had sex. And
then you went to birth?
No,
what the
bro.
crap?
And she's like, I think I'm having Braxton Hicks contractions. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So like 2 or 3 in the morning, I woke up and she wasn't in bed. And I'm like, where is she? You know, it was like a 1,100 square foot house. It wasn't big.
Yeah.
So I went to the only full bathroom we had, and she was taking a shower. And I said, hey, what's going on? She's like, I'm having Braxton Hicks contractions. I was like, pretty sure you're having a baby. I think we need to go. And she's
So
like,
you were
no.
the one.
She's like, no, it's not. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to call the hospital. So we called Mother Francis, and she talked to the nurse. And she's like, I'm just having Braxton Hicks contractions. And the nurse is like, okay, well, call us if anything changes. And they hung up. And I'm like, we need to go. Oh my God. And she's like, no. She couldn't even get out of the shower, bro. It was a tub shower, you know. I had to help her get out of the shower. And then she's like, I'm having another Braxton Hicks contraction. I'm like, get in the car. So we get in the car and we go to the hospital. First of all, she could barely walk, you know. So like we get to the entrance hallway and she like goes down to the ground. And I'm like, hey, we need a wheelchair. So somebody comes and gets her, and we get up to labor and delivery, and they sit me in the waiting room next to this other guy that's got like 4 kids under the age of 6.
That's savage.
He looks at me and he goes, first time? And I'm like, yep. He's like, you're going to be fine. I'm like, dude, I don't think so, bro.
Yeah.
And so they wheel her off. And I don't even get into a conversation with this guy, which I was 100% about to. And they come back, they're like, Mr. Thetford? I'm like, yeah. They're like, you need to come with us. The baby's coming. So I'm like texting people, you know, from my Palm Pilot or whatever I had. You know?
Dude.
I'm like, hey, I think it's coming now. And so, you know, it was probably 6 in the morning maybe at this time. And like, she was in hard labor for 20 minutes. The baby was out. But
well, man, I'll tell you about the experience, and I know Miranda won't mind me sharing this. So like when we're getting after it, we had some of the most godliest, I mean, just like incredible moments because, you know, we've been praying, and you know, this is another deal. You know, Satan distracts us to pray over our wives. That's our job, is to verbally pray over our family, you know, and that's a simple thing to do. But Satan's like whispers in our ear saying, man, you're too tired. It ain't going to matter.
You're not good enough.
Who cares? Or who cares? Or simple things like, no, you need to be pissed off at your wife about this. Like, who cares? You know, but we got to the point to where Miranda and I, and it's my responsibility to like lead us in prayer, but it was getting to the point in that pregnancy in that 8-9 months to where Miranda said, hey, will you pray over us? You know, and so just pray. And there was a moment to basically let up to us to where the nurses were coming in. You're dilating. Things are going well. They're speeding up, and man, things are going great. Even though it was a long day, it went by fast.
Right.
And there was a moment where the nurse said, "Okay, you're dilated up. It's time to push." They left, and what was really cool is that Miranda wanted my mother and her mother in the room with us, and I was fully supportive of that. You know, that's cool. And then it came to the moment to where I was like, I need to pray over us because something's about to happen. Like, we're about to meet our daughter, you know? And I looked at Miranda and said, I'm going to pray over us. And our moms came over us, and I just prayed. And I just said, man, I get emotional right now talking about this, but I just said, God, if it's your time and we're ready. Like, I know she's in your hands right now. She's in the mother's womb, and you're still creating her, and you're still having conversations with her, and she's still hearing the voices of the angels and the beauty of heaven. But God, if it's time, man, we're ready for her.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we're doing, but we're ready. Like, we're ready for her. And then moments later, you know, the nurses and everything came in and pushed. And, you know, man, I was in 7th and 8th grade one time, and they made us watch the video of childbirth.
No way.
Yeah, man, I had to get our parents'
way.
signature. And I mean, here's the deal, dude. I didn't see porn until later on in life, but I thought, this is the closest thing I'm going to get.
Oh, my gosh.
And so it's like, well, sign me up. Let's go. Woo, buddy. Like,
not the same.
So, and so anyway, saw it happen, and I thought that's always been ingrained in my vision to where Miranda, even during her pregnancy, you going to watch it happen? You going to watch it? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to watch it happen. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, hell no, that ain't going to happen. But basically, it came down to the point to where, man, just this excitement, seeing my wife push and just seeing, I'm out to meet my daughter, man, physically. And then the nurse goes, Dad, do you want to watch? Do you want to watch? And I said, absolutely. And not to go into great detail, but enough detail to say that when I came around with my wife's leg over above my shoulder and I got to look and I got to see Stevie's head for the first time without my wife pushing, but seeing Stevie's head wiggle, trying to get out. Man, that was, Trey, y'all were talking about, like, what was that God moment? That was a God moment.
Yeah.
Because that was my daughter ready to come out in the world. And that was the moment to say, dude, you're about to be a dad. You get to be a part of this woman's life that God created. That was freaking rad, man. That was rad.
Well, I was so honored because the morning that y'all went into labor, I was doing announcements. And
of
course I bombed. I did terrible on announcements. I always, usually it's my phone. Like if we have to have the announcements on my phone, I'm going to screw it out. You print it on a piece of paper.
So what happened? Tell me.
I'm good.
Tell me what happened.
Well, I got to
second or first service? Both?
Second service.
Okay, yeah.
But I bombed. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But I got to lead prayer.
Yeah.
And I got to lead it over you guys.
No,
in
dude.
that, and that was such an honorable moment. Like
So,
that's what brings everything in.
So what was the word around the street that Sunday morning? Like they're going into labor.
They're going into labor. Like it's happening. Like everybody get ready.
So you led the prayer?
And I got to lead prayer on stage for that.
Thank
so
you, Pat.
it was
That's
such
awesome,
an honor
man.
to that. So.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But being a dad, guys, I mean, y'all are both dads, and I know, Trey, I appreciate you saying what you say because it's different seasons and different stories and everything else like that. But those God moments I'm still finding, man. You would hear these stories, they're like, man, when you see your child for the first time, it's a different kind of love. And yeah, man, it was exciting. But at the same time, it wasn't like this overwhelming, and this makes me sound like a piece of crap, but y'all know my heart, and the listeners can think whatever they want, but it wasn't this overwhelming like sense of God's love for me. But those moments of like holding my daughter at 3 a.m. or seeing her head wiggle or even now talking about her, or seeing her when I get off of work when I'm just like pissed off and want to stop at the gas station and get me a tall boy beer to drive on my way home just to, whatever. It's those moments to be able to hold my daughter and her find her bottle like, she does that when she's, and I'm holding her against my chest and she's going after my neck trying to, get it. And she's, that's that moment.
Yeah.
That's that moment of just like, holy crap.
And for y'all, being the new parents and everything, like, I think it says in Psalm somewhere that God is closest to the broken and contrite heart. Like, those are the most broken moments that you can have because you want to get sleep.
So
you want them to get to sleep.
Can we talk about that since you are both dads?
Absolutely.
I don't know what y'all's experience is like, but I have never, ever, ever been told, except by one person, and I'll give him a shout out. Jacob at Longview, who books at Tijuanitas and Longview, told me he was a year-long dad, with his daughter that he had. And he found out that Miranda and I were pregnant. And he's like, dude, I'm so excited for you, but I'm going to tell you a piece of advice that probably nobody's going to give you. And I was like, okay, great. And he goes, there's going to be times, because he has a daughter. He goes, my daughter screams at the top of her lungs. I'm not on much sleep. My wife and I are at each other's throats because we're not on much sleep, to where I just want to scream at my daughter. I want to scream at my new baby and just, be aggravated. And I thought, man, this guy's a piece of shit. But at the same time, the second week my daughter was home, I will say this vulnerably because I think a man needs to hear this, that soon-to-be father or that is a father, and take the guilt off your shoulders, man. I was holding my daughter, and I thought, I just want to throw her through the window right now. Like I don't know what's going on. Like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I love her, but
there's
it
nothing
would be
I
so
can
easy
do.
just to like.
Have you been like, I wish you could just talk? Yeah. Has that happened
Just
yet?
tell me.
Like, what do you want? What do you want?
And that's where the Sunday school answers and like the children's TV shows come into play, to where I don't want her to talk. I want her to stay like this forever, man.
Yeah.
I want her to stay like this forever because she's a baby, and it's so much fun that she falls asleep on my chest, or seeing my wife find the most joy I've ever seen out of her life whenever Stevie's, they're goofing off together and Stevie's kind of not chuckling, but we act
She's
like
learning.
she is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's things like that to where I'm like, man, I don't want it to change, because my wife, even today, sent me a photo of the very first photo of Stevie in her car seat. Stevie's like doubled the size.
Yeah.
And that's insane. You know, in 6-7 weeks that Stevie has, you know, in our eyes, doubled the size. Like, I hold her and I'm like, dude, you're heavier. Like, you have more control over your neck. Like, this is crazy, to where I want to go back to that 2-week moment where I was wanting to lose my mind and say, you selfish prick, like, enjoy this moment with your daughter.
Well, I mean, there's a book called The Precious Present. I'll plug this book. You should read it. It's like 20 or 30 pages or something. The Precious Present. You can probably YouTube it and somebody else will read it to you. Fantastic book. But life is about the journey. It's not about the destination. I think there's a lot of focus in the church about we need to get people saved. And then, like, you get them saved, but then, like, who's going to disciple them? Who's going to be their friend? Who's going to have the community? And there's a lot of, you know, focus on, I'm going to have a baby, I'm going to have a baby, I'm going to have a baby. When you have the baby, then you have the business of being the father, being the parent. And, you know, so this is not Disney Channel, right? Like, this is not happily ever after.
Right.
Like, this is the ever after. We're in it now. And, like, in Freedom Weekend, we say, hey, this is not Freedom Weekend. This is real life. You know, this is your life.
Right.
And so, dude, the journey, man. Like, I understand wanting to stay in this baby phase. And I've talked to a lot of men, and I've been guilty of it myself, of thinking, like, you know, either I wish we could rewind or I wish we could fast forward because, like, this part of the story is hard, or I don't really understand what the point of it is. But, like, dude, what a trip to get to watch my daughter. I mean, she's going to turn 18 in December. She's going to graduate in May.
Wow.
You know?
Dude.
And like, it feels like just yesterday.
Does it really, though, Trey?
It's so fast.
Because
I thought that was BS.
Well, see,
I've heard it.
I had a conversation with a mentor friend of mine in the oil and gas business, and he texted me and said, just found out you had a baby. Congratulations. So I called him. We talked for 40 minutes. This was yesterday.
Yeah.
And he has 2 kids that have graduated high school a year apart. And his youngest one just graduated. And he goes, Paul, I'm going to tell you, he's never been a spiritual guy. We've only talked about oil and gas, you know, cut and dry conversations. He goes, I'm telling you right now, it moves fast. It really does. And I'm thinking, everybody keeps saying that. Everybody keeps saying that.
It's only 18 summers.
Yeah.
It's fast, dude. And, like, just got to be there. That's it. It's just showing up. Half of our men's ministry is just show up.
Right.
It starts at 6. We'll see you then. Show up at 4:30 and help set up. Just show up. The time that you get to just be in a house with your wife and child, bro. And it's so easy to take for granted. And I'm just wondering, I mean, like, look at our brother Pat. His daughter's in Australia. I don't even know if you have to go over Antarctica or whatever, if the Earth's flat. But, like,
I listened to it.
It's either far away or really far away, depending on how you believe in the world.
Clouds or glaciers. I don't know.
But I'm telling you, dude, super huge blessing to have your kid in your house.
Thank you.
And your child and your wife are blessed to have you as a spiritual leader.
They really
in
are.
the house.
And you're going to break me up.
I'm telling you, dude, this is as real as it can be. Because for a lot of my daughter's life, I was running from God too. Maybe not like full steam running, but I thought I could just stay in the middle of the fence. You know, like, I believed in God, but, like, I didn't do a lot of praying for her. And I feel guilty about that. And, like, I don't pray with my wife enough. But we had that episode with Paul Roberts, and he talked about every marriage that shows up to he and his wife's marriage coaching that's ready to get divorced. 100% of those men do not pray with their wives.
Oh, bro, it's
and
powerful.
So we had David Wise on, and I asked him, hey, do you pray with your wife? And he goes, I have in the past, and I haven't been, but, you know, I finished Paul Roberts' second episode last night, and I grabbed Brittany, and we prayed then. Man. I prayed for her then.
That's something that I feel like in our community that we're a part of, it's been a constant conversation piece, because I've been sharing that, you know, as much as I can, to the fact of why do we feel so intimidated? It's like an intimidation, or why do we just not do it? It's not hard, because my wife and I, you know, could be in a fight, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with me praying over my wife, you know, after that fight, of just saying, God, and I'll tell you, one of the most powerful prayers and moments of our life was a few nights ago when we were praying over Stevie, and I was holding her and Miranda was around my shoulder, and I just said, you know, I feel like we like to pray for patience because that makes us better. You know,
I don't ever do that.
Well, good for you. But I would pray for patience all the time. You know, God, give me patience, give me patience.
So he sent you Miranda.
Well, not just Miranda, but he sent me like chaos. You know, things that I wasn't used to.
Right.
But I remember praying over Stevie, and I said, God, I'm just ready to pray for joy. Like I'm tired of learning about patience right now. I just really need some joy, and I need us to have moments of Stevie to get rest, and I need moments of Miranda to find peace, and just praying for kind of God, show your hand in things that we just selfishly need right now, because you know what we need, and that's what we're praying. Because I'm tired of praying for patience. I'm done praying. I don't want to pray for that anymore. I just want to pray for joy, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like whether it's my upbringing or anything else along those lines of sermons that you hear, that it's not okay to pray prayers like that. That's bull crap, man. Like, God wants to hear your heart.
Oh, dude, I just talk to God like I'm talking to y'all.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
He wants to hear your heart.
And I want to affirm you guys because, like, you know, I used to pray for patience too. And, oh man, one day a man told me, he was like, you realize that the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is the same spirit that gives you patience.
Come on.
That gives you love. Yeah. That gives you joy.
Come on.
He said, so what I'm going to encourage you to do is start walking in that patience, walking in that spirit, walking in that love, and to affirm and tell yourself you have been equipped with the patience that you need for your everyday life. So that's what I'm just gonna speak that to you because that's something that I think people tend to forget, is that we can get overloaded by the world, we can get overloaded by the enemy. We can get overloaded by ourselves. And whenever we stop holding on to who God is and his goodness that he has given us in our life, I mean, we have Jesus. Mm-hmm. Like, we have the creator of the universe who sent his son for us out of love, who made a way, who he did not have to do by any means. He didn't have to step down into time. Yet, he chose to walk the same walk that we have.
Yeah, man.
And the same spirit that raised him up lives in you.
Come on, man.
Lives in anybody listening.
See,
right
you know,
now
and
also.
you mentioned about, like, I haven't been to check-in in a few weeks, dude. This is your check-in now.
Yeah.
Like, this podcast is your community, to where not only are you giving vulnerability to, like, 3 guys right now that were brothers, because, I mean, we would have this conversation, you know, at an IHOP, you know, but the bottom line is that I'm so proud of the both of you to be recording conversations with people to where, you know, I know you haven't been to a check-in, but then this is your check-in. Like, what you just said to me is exactly what a check-in is, you know? And I know that I know that, but the affirmation matters.
It does matter.
So thank you. Thank you, Pat.
God speaks to us through people most of the time.
Thank you, Trey. Like, you talking about your story and everything else like that when it comes to, you know, fatherhood and everything, man. That's a big freaking deal for sure.
Pain shared is pain divided, and joy shared is joy multiplied, and that's what we get to experience in our family, in our church family, and in our men's ministry.
Yeah, you know? Dude, you better clip that, dude. That's freaking awesome.
Don't clip it. No, I'm just kidding.
I've got a question. Are you compliant to God, or are you surrendered to God? And is that like a one and done deal, or is that like a daily thing?
Yeah. So I understand the surrendering deal. Can you unwrap the compliant?
Yeah. So I'm convinced that there's a difference between compliance and surrender. And I think that only a human is really capable of true surrender, because I think animals don't have the ability to decide things. So like for me, if my parents say, you have to be home at 10 o'clock,
right,
I can come home at 10 o'clock and be like, this is stupid.
Right.
I don't want to do this.
You're being compliant.
But I comply.
Right.
Now, the difference is if they go, hey, you have to be home at 10 o'clock, and I'm like, I get to go home at 10 o'clock. It's the attitude behind it that's different.
I get what you're saying. And man, that's such a deep question because I feel like that's something I'm always going to be learning. And here's a God moment that just came to me. I'm not trying to be Sunday school, all right? But as a dad to my daughter, my daughter crying, trying to figure out what those cries mean. Does that mean you're sleepy? Does that mean you're hungry? And my wife and I realizing what those mean. I feel like that's the God moments of seeing how my father relates to me. You know, he understands my cry. He understands where I'm at.
Yeah. God created us, so he doesn't have to go.
Right.
I wonder what he means.
Just like if I were to bring Stevie in this room right now and she started crying to the both of you guys, y'all's first time meeting her, you're like, what the hell's going on with her? I'm a dad, but what's going on with her? You know, has she ate? Does she need her diaper changed? Is she tired? Like, what's going on? There's a lot of questions, but Miranda and I know those questions because we were raising her, you know? And so to answer that question, I think it's about 50-50 in my life always. You know, I feel like the hardest thing is to surrender to God in the sense of things that are out of my control because I have to do that.
Well, Trey. I think that's the essence of it, right? It's like when you surrender to God, you're saying, "Hey, I'm relinquishing control to you,
and that's
my
hard.
Creator."
But what I relinquish control to my Creator is the things that are out of my control because that's what he spoke to me. You know, there's ways I can react to my wife to make things better. There's things I can react to my child. There's things I can react to my job. There's things I can just react to my addictions that I know I can struggle with and everything else like that I have control over. But ultimately, how my wife reacts to me outside of how I treat her or my daughter or my friends or my job, there's only so much control I have to where I have to surrender that to the Lord and trust Him. So that's a portion of it that I feel like. But the compliance, I feel like, is more negativity of I have to do this. I have to do this in order for God to love me. I have to do this in order for me to be a good Christian or to be a good example, you know. So, but I also think that the compliance to God too is to honor Him in ways that we surrender to Him and to not make this more complicated, but I think that the surrender for my life outweighs the compliance because the compliance relates more to what I think God wants from me when all God wants from me is to be who I am, to surrender the things that I don't have control over to Him. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, God's in the business of outcomes.
Yeah.
He's in the business of outcomes. And so
and
I think surrender is great.
Yeah.
Compliance is not necessarily bad.
Right. No, and that's what I'm trying to say too, is the sense to where like the compliance side of it, I feel like I put more weight on because I'm a type of guy that wants to be a planner. I'm the type of guy that wants to know the outcome. That's the struggles I have in my marriage. That's the struggles I have as a dad. That's the struggles I have in my friendships or my occupation. It's just that I want to know the outcome by the way I react to something or anything along those lines. But the surrender to the Lord is where I find most joy.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that sometimes the compliance turns into surrender if you let it.
Yeah, yes. So like, can I ask y'all a question? Yep. You know, just to what is the benefits of compliance to the Lord?
Well, you don't get in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, to me, I look at compliance like they say don't talk in class. I didn't talk in class, so I'm not going to get in trouble for talking in class.
Yeah.
But I think surrender takes trust. It takes a relationship, you know, like beyond this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know?
So compliance is kind of like the addition, subtraction of math, but the surrender is the multiplication and division and all the other stuff that are like more, you know, it's a bigger, I mean,
does that make sense? To it. It's the lead up to
compliance is following the rules. Surrender is
changing your
accepting
heart.
A master.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know,
there you go.
Yeah, changing your heart's great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you asking me that question, you know, just to relate to both of you fellas in the sense to where do you find the importance of asking that question? Or the importance, you know, but the meaning, I guess I should say, like, because the question was laid on your heart.
Yeah. So for me, I started wrestling with this idea when I got sober when I was 18 because I was in treatment and I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to get out. And so I started doing everything that they told me to do, my little workbooks, answering questions in groups, whatever I had to do, because I was like, I kind of think I'll get out on good behavior, because I'm going to be compliant. And I don't know that I consciously thought the word compliant, but that's what I did. I did what they asked. And, sure as, I don't know if we ran out of insurance money but whatever, because they were like, hey, you're doing great. I think we're going to discharge you from this drug treatment. And in the process of being compliant, I found myself surrendering.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
I can relate to that because I know whenever I became a true believer, like I got out of my upbringing and everything, and I went to a ranch in Hawkins, Texas, that one of their requirements every morning was prayer time, reading, getting into the Word, like doing that. I was so rebellious towards that. I did not like being told what to do. Like, you can't convince me that by you telling me this is going to benefit me. But now I find myself in prayer all day sometimes. I'll find myself listening to the Word. I find myself like I've completed these steps in compliance, but now, like you said, I started surrendering more. Yeah. And then, like, it's no longer a compliance thing. I have this desire to hear from God, to learn more about Him, and it kind of produces a hunger.
It's a humility too. I think when you get into surrender, you get the fruit of the Spirit.
Right.
And I think when you're compliant, you spare the rod, because you're not acting bad.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's like, even when I've had the opportunity to lead worship here at the church, especially during Miranda's absence, doing it the last 2 weeks, I don't care if it comes across weird or anything, but I always want to take a moment to say, y'all know who I am on the stage, singing and stuff like that. Like, I feel like I know 90% of the room to where they can trust me and say, hey, just take a few moments and lift this up to the Lord. Yeah. Whether, and that's giving them an opportunity to know that it's okay to surrender. Like, it's okay to come, because all of us right now, whether we're dealing with the same stuff or not, we're all in need of surrender something.
Yeah.
So I feel like in the stage of life that I'm in right now, that surrendering doesn't come easier, but it's just, man, there's no other option. There's no other option. There's zero other option.
And usually it's because you've exhausted all the other options.
Yeah, and to be compliant, because I feel like a majority of my life, for my upbringing, no fault to my parents. They're phenomenal, and I love them, even though they're imperfect and everything. I feel like the compliancy is what, and the compliancy too, to where, like, not talking about this topic, but growing up understanding sex was just so taboo to be compliant. That wasn't surrendering that to the Lord. Nobody told me surrender your temptation, surrender that, and trust God that He knows what He's doing, designing you as a man, even if you're 13 years old figuring this out. Instead, it was compliance to say, if you're going to have sex outside of marriage, you're going to get an STD or get a girl pregnant. That's your only option. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Nobody took the time to educate me on what that actually was scientifically or also spiritually. It was just be compliant. This is what you're supposed to do. This is, that's just an example. It could be drinking. It could be anything. The compliance of following along the rules, when, as you said, Trey, which I thought was beautifully, it's like, man, being compliant is just being a good person. Like, it's like, just abiding to what Scripture is saying, and being, in that sense of, following along, but giving yourself grace, because the grace is where surrender comes in. To say, God, I surrender this to you and lay it at your feet, because only you and Jesus are capable of showing me what this means.
I mean, God doesn't have any grandkids.
Yeah.
So you're his son, Miranda's his daughter, and Stevie's also his daughter.
Yeah, dude.
And so, like, when Stevie cries and you and Miranda attend to her cries, y'all aren't thinking, what an inconvenience this is. You know, God wants to hear from us. And, you know, yeah, maybe you don't get punished for being compliant, but it's pretty superficial, you know? Like, nobody wants to be punished.
Well, you know, you said the word convenient, or it's inconvenient when they're crying. That's another God moment that you're speaking to me about. You know, hearing God is God does not get impatient with me crying.
No,
It's out to him.
never.
But
In
my
fact,
daughter,
he rejoices for it,
and
just like the prodigal son. The dad ran to him in the field.
and here's the realistic the reality of it is that 2 weeks in, I became very impatient when my daughter's crying. You know, but that Trey is what you're talking about. That's making me see in a different lens of like God's love for me, and representing that to my child. Therefore, you know, through the 7 weeks, I'm not saying it's gotten easier, but it's allowed me to be more understanding of God that represents who I am as a father, to say now when Stevie cries, I look at things about her that I love, like how her mouth is formed and the tone of her voice and all these things. Not saying it like when 3 a.m. or even when it could be a random time on a bad time of the day to where she's crying. I'm like, dude, shut up and just let me have a moment. You know, Miranda, get up and take her so I can go hang out and do whatever I want to do.
Go with the boys on the podcast.
That's selfish crap, man. You know, but the reality of it is, Trey, you just spoke truth to me as a dad, in the sense of when God hears me do that, man, he rejoices in that because I'm crying out to him. I'm crying out to him.
He gave you a voice so that he could talk to you.
And I think about honoring God is being compliant. You know, then if we could talk more about that, in the sense to where like God seeks worship and honor through our lives, to where if we're constantly crying out to him about the same things, but we're making our own choices, I feel like we serve a very forgiving God. I do, and a patient God. But what kind of worship is that if I'm continually crying out to God about the same stuff? God, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this. But God's given me men in my life, or given me opportunities in my life to know the trajectory I need to go. But I'm still choosing to cry out to God because I don't want to do that. I feel like God gets glory out of the worship of how we live our lives, and give it over to him when we cry out to him, to start being compliant. So this is a deeper conversation, you know, as I'm talking this out, you know, of learning to where the surrender to God's cool, but you know, we talked about that, but being compliant is, man, that's a really great act of worship, to where we're crying out to God and he's teaching us things, and think God sees us, like with Stevie or with y'all's own kids. Man, they're kind of on the trajectory now. They're kind of, they get what they're doing. That's the act of worship that I think God really, you know, it's like, heck yeah, dude. Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. You know, because I'm a free will guy in the sense to where, like, I feel like God gives us the opportunities, but I feel like he's also an all-knowing God. But with that, you know, I keep repeating myself in word salad because I'm still digesting it. But the surrender to God's great, and it's pure, and that's what I feel like gives him the act of worship. But I feel like, you know, just talking out loud, when we start living a life of trajectory of, you know, obedience and all of that, that's where I feel like the true act of worship comes out, because other people start seeing that, you know. Because if I were to tell you guys, like, man, I'm struggling with, I'll just throw out this example, you know, because we're men and stuff like that, and this is a big struggle in the men community that people don't want to talk about. Man, I'm struggling with porn. I'm struggling with pornography. I mean, y'all are hearing me talk about that, and y'all are giving me grace. Y'all are hearing me talk about it. But 6 months down the road, if I'm still talking about it, and I'm not taking any action towards it, whether it's through the words of God or whether it's through the words that y'all are speaking to me through the Lord and the surrender that I've been given to God, and y'all could see some things that God's doing in my life and all those things. But if I keep saying, like, man, I'm still struggling with pornography, where does that come into play? Like, where am I being obedient of change after 6 months? Because
I'll tell you this. I have some ideas about this, and they stem from God and I's victory over addiction in my life. And what I found is I drank and used drugs against my will for about a year of my life, 17, 18, somewhere in there. Like, legitimately went to church, prayed, went down during the benediction, got in my truck, rolled a joint, smoked a joint, drank a beer, hot beer, and I was just bewildered. I couldn't understand it. I thought maybe God doesn't care about me, or maybe he's not real. Maybe he doesn't love me. I thought a lot of crazy stuff. When I finally said, okay, God, I can't fix this. It's yours. I'm done. Do whatever it is you want to do for me.
Right.
That's when I got relief from that problem.
And
I think a lot of people that are, quote, struggling with porn,
right,
or struggling with being nice to their wife, they're personally themselves working on themselves. We don't have any business working on ourselves. We did not create ourselves. God did.
Right.
Yeah. He's the master.
Right.
So surrender to me is going, okay, God, you are the God of Abraham, the God of the universe.
Come on, man.
You created me. And I want you to mold me. Do what you need to do to me. I'll get out of the way. What I want, I don't care. I want what you want. Show me what you want. Show me what's next, And when I do that, I get answers.
That's cool. And then you staying on the path,
Like, I'm going to mess up. Like, if my problem's porn, I'm probably going to look at it again.
Right. But at the same time, it's like a true surrender of that, in that obedience. Like, and here's an example with me. It's like, I don't say this boastfully because I'm about to tell you something. You're like, Paul, why the crap do you struggle with that? But pornography was something to where, like, I would look at a stage in life when it became accessible, and then it just wasn't something that I was like addicted to, know. However, I lived a life from 20 to 30 years old to where I could do whatever I wanted, with zero consequences. And my wife and I, to share my business only, is, whenever we got engaged, we talked about how soul ties matter. Okay. And by soul ties, I'm talking about when you have sexual relationship with somebody of a connection, that's a soul tie. I've had, sexual relationships with people that I had zero connection with. It was just like, this is what it is. I don't give a crap about you. This is what it is. That shows how crappy of a person I was. But the addiction for me was that connection, was that just that moment, and when it became a part of people that I cared about, my wife and I started having conversations later on to where God bless her of the Lord preparing my heart for our marriage. Because there's a book, Trey, you've been talking about a lot about books. Sacred Marriage is a killer book that we read together before we got married that I wish I would have read when I was 18 years old, but
who wrote that book?
I can't tell.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. But Sacred Marriage, in the sense of just talking about the sacrificial, and the biggest part I got out of it is that's the most beautiful act of worship you give to the Lord. It's through your marriage, because that's the ultimate sacrifice and ultimate servanthood. That's not about you; it's about serving someone. But Miranda, I'll never forget, her having a conversation with me. Soul ties are real. Soul ties are real, and they take healing that you either got to deal with or you got to surrender to. And that was the moment of surrendering some of these addictions I had to the Lord, to where I can hear the serpent, like Revelation 12, it's a dragon, but he's also designed as a serpent. And the serpent whispers in your ear to where I still will always, and I've accepted it, will always hear the whispers of cheating on my wife, or thinking about somebody that you had relationships with before, or thinking about this or that, just these lies, because that's what he wants.
Yeah.
But in the reality and the defense mechanism of putting your wall up and knowing that your God's a lion ready to roar and defend against you and to fight for you, is when you can become open about what Satan's whispering to you about and know that you're not a failure for that. So like me telling y'all that on a podcast of like some intimate conversations that my wife and I have had that listeners can listen to make me feel like a failure and that I'm a piece of crap. But the reality of it is God saying, no, I'm getting victory out of this because you're showing other men, specifically what we're talking about, that it's okay to have these conversations. Because Satan hates that. Satan wants to destroy that. Again, Satan wants you to isolate.
Absolutely. And if you don't share freely your story, then how can God redeem it?
Yeah, because Satan
want to
was
lock it up in a box.
As I was talking about that, don't talk about that. Y'all are recording that. Don't talk about that. What do we... Any man has not thought about, certain things in their minds, whether they're married or not, that is sinful. Anybody that says that they haven't, one, if you're telling the truth, I need to know how you're walking with the Lord. Two, I really doubt that you're telling the truth, and you need to just know that it's okay to be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Trey?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, I think, talking about surrender and... What was the other one, Trey? You said
compliance.
Yeah,
compliance and surrender.
I think they go hand in hand in some regard to where, the surrender to the Lord he finds so much joy in, but the compliance that we have that's truly genuine, dude, that's our act of worship. That's our act of worship. That's the act of worship to where it's like, shoot, man, that attracts people to Jesus,
I think heaven really touches earth in those moments.
Yeah.
Because whenever you're able to share with somebody your issues, I mean, I just shared some of my issues with Trey while you were in the bathroom. Like getting those things out, it's like a weight just comes right off of you. And being able to lay it down and being able to say, all right, God, I know I've been in this situation for a long time and I'm still praying for the same thing, but I know that you're still in charge of it.
Come on. Come on, man. Yeah, because there's redemption and there's forgiveness and grace in everything that we do. And Trey, growing up, again, not my parents, I want to make that clear in case mom and dad listen to this, but it's like...
I hope they do.
I do too. But at the same time, the compliance came from my own mindset of what I thought the church and God wanted from me, for being a part of that for so long, of what I created and what Satan whispered to me. Because again, we talk about the serpent. The dragon wants to destroy everything that God's doing beneficial in my life. That's the goal of the dragon. That's the goal of Satan, is to destroy everything that is beneficial from the Lord. And so these rules and things is the dragon saying, that's exactly how it needs to be. And that's the serpent whispering, that's exactly how it needs to be. And when I create these rules for my life of how I need to live, when God wants me to be free from all of that, saying, I've created you to be who you are. And that the path that I'm leading you on is when you surrender, I'm going to lead you as long as you follow me, in on that. That goes back to what my brother-in-law Chance said and what we've talked about and everything along those lines. Come as you are, but leave with
changed.
The change of striving to be more like Jesus. And I'm never going to figure out how to be like Jesus. Like I will every day struggle figuring out how to truly love like Jesus. I will. But man, I'm going to strive to do that the best that I can.
I will abide in him.
I got to, man. Yeah. What other choice do I got? Because I've lived I still consider it a short time, Trey, 40 years. That ain't, I'm halfway done, compared to the average of the life. But in the 40 years, man, I'm doing my best. And
I mean, do you look back and go, what did I do for the first 35 years of my life?
I look back at the last 10, but at the same time, I look at the last 10 and know that the wilderness period of my life was also beneficial because God will use our ashes into beauty, my
100%.
Always. Yeah. Always we'll use our ashes into beauty.
And I'm still stumbling upon new ways that my past failure as a human has benefited somebody or allowed me to connect with somebody in a meaningful way, which is why I'm so happy that we have this forum. We've got this podcast.
Yeah.
People are listening, and like Pat, y'all, I'm getting feedback. People have messaged us on the Facebook. Excellent. They've posted. People are hearing this. People are seeing me out in public. They're like, "Where do you go to church?"
Come on,
because like I want to go there.
Come on,
right? Come on. Like, hey, I'd love for you to come here, but go somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere.
Well, again, it goes back to that community aspect. Like there's been people that have asked me, it's like, is there any single women there? I'm like, okay, this isn't the place for you.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of dudes up here.
Well, not just that, but it's like, no. If you want to be a part of a community, come on.
Yeah.
But if you're coming to find somebody that you're going to spend the rest of your life with,
I mean,
maybe that could happen. I'm not saying that
can't happen for you. Well,
yeah, but of course, and I'm the one that. But at the same time, I think once you become obedient and you're at the sense to where it's like, man, I want to be a part of this community, God just starts providing the desires of your heart.
Dude, I got on my knees or sat in a chair or something at Crossbrand Cowboy Church on a Monday night, and 10 or 15 guys put hands on me and prayed. And I was super running through women, and they made me pray too, And I said, God, if any of these women that I'm dating are bad, then just get rid of them, And then they prayed, and they prayed. I mean, we all prayed that I would find whoever God has for me. And I mean, real short, quick, I met Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not a day goes by. And when I introduced her to Paul Roberts and Jeff Butler and some of these guys from Spar, they hugged her and said, "We prayed for you."
Well, and Trey, I appreciate you saying that too, and I know your heart to know that I feel like you're going to agree with what I'm about to say because I have been with some really incredible women. Like I'm talking like good women, And the deal is that not only was God, seeing you through all that, man, God was also seeing these women through that.
Yeah,
because there's women that I was with that God was not going to allow me to be with them because I was going to destroy their life.
Yep. I mean, hell,
you know what I'm saying?
I heard a lot of people too. I mean, it happens.
So, like talking about, because I feel like sometimes we can get, I'm not saying y'all, I'm really talking out loud with what is going on in my mind and my heart of what God's doing is that, Miranda, obviously being the foundation, no question about it, the partner that God designed for me to be with. But at the same time, Miranda's past relationships, my past relationships, it's not to say that God couldn't have used those, but Lord willing, God protected me from being with one, but God also protected maybe possibly some of them from being with me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because that's how my God orchestrates the author of the story.
Yeah, and who could hear your story of how you met Miranda and how Stevie came to be and deny that God ordained it, designed it, orchestrated it? How can you think that it was even a coincidence?
I give all glory to the Lord about that. I really do. Because Miranda and I's marriage is not perfect. Dude, trust me, it's not. My woman is a lion. She is a fire, and I am a Pisces. I am a fish that goes along the flow that I want to go along, However, the foundation of Jesus Christ, for any relationship, Miranda and I talk about this all the time. Maybe it's just our personalities or whatever. It's like, I don't understand how a relationship can be longevity without foundation of Jesus Christ. I just
That's what Pat said.
I don't understand how relationships can be pure and joyful if there's not a foundation of Jesus Christ, because I'm living in it right now, man. I'm seeing the waves of our daughter who's beautiful and wonderful, and I would die for her, and I can honestly say I love my wife more than my daughter, but at the same time, it's a different kind of love. It's a way different kind of love. But my wife waking up this morning and kissing me on the lips like it's time for a, good night, of reminding me that she loves me when I was impatient with her last night, when I was picking a fight. Holy crap, man, that's the foundation of Jesus Christ. That's the foundation of Jesus Christ at night, to say, Miranda, it's okay to let go control. You are the mother of our child, and you know what's best for our child, but you got to trust me as her dad that if she cries, you need to sleep through that because I got this. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's the foundation of Jesus, man. That's not, there's nothing else that can state that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So again, I know that there's relationships of people that I know that don't go to church or maybe not know the Lord. I don't know what their private life's like, but they seem to maintain it. They've been married for years and years and years and years, and you're like, well, man, God bless you. Cool. I just know if I'm speaking for me and speaking for my wife, there ain't no way it's going to work without the foundation of Jesus. And what's awesome too is that two of you as my brothers are going to know whenever I'm straying off from the foundation of Jesus because of the vulnerability that we have. You know what I'm saying?
What a calling you have to be the priest of your home.
Well, thank you.
You know, that's a tall order.
Dude, it's intimidating.
You've got 2 other humans at your house, and you're in charge of their spiritual well-being.
But I
through
think
prayer, through behavior, through...
But I think you're equipped for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And therefore,
100%.
you are called.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm very grateful to have a wife that also equips me too in moments of weakness, for sure.
Y'all speak life into each other.
Try, man. Dude,
But y'all have to read the book Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs.
Hey, man,
I
is he
sent
still
you the
alive?
video.
Yes,
he's still alive.
Okay, so have you reached out to him about being on here?
No, I haven't,
Why?
but I guess I should.
Yeah, man,
I?
you could get Skype on here or something.
100%.
Yeah, dude, he'd probably eat it up.
Dude.
And then after 5 minutes, he's like, do you guys know the Lord? What did I sign up for?
Dude, I'm telling you, Miranda and you should absolutely go to this thing.
Thank you.
It's Valentine's weekend. So
Sweet.
I don't know if
February
you have anything-
14th, baby.
I don't know what day the weekend is, but
Yeah,
the
man.
Friday and Saturday, it's
Epic.
so worth it.
Epic.
Y'all would love it.
Yeah.
And Pat can ride with you or something.
Yeah. Or I can ride with Pat.
No, I'll take my own truck.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
in case I
that's
need to leave.
I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Probably don't want a carpool to that
Yeah, you don't.
because the ride home was like,
It's kind of like a freedom weekend ride home.
bro,
You know what I'm
it's
saying?
freedom weekend for a marriage. And I went before I was married with a wife that didn't believe.
Right.
And it was powerful, dude. It was. My wife will tell the same thing. We're gonna have to have her on. I want to have. I want to have Brittany and my wife on, but Travis said absolutely not. Brittany can't be on the podcast.
Right.
So I'm just gonna put that out there in the universe. Brittany, if you're listening, we want you.
Yeah. Brittany can start her own podcast.
Yeah.
We could be guests on it.
I would be down for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say, Paul, is there anything that you want to talk about or you feel like you need to say or that you want to put out there? Because, I've got time too.
Yeah. Pat, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I'm tired. I worked all day.
No, I'm tired too.
Yeah.
I'm tired too. I'm just enjoying this time. But I will say this: if there's anything that I want to say, is that you can take the Sunday school answer for what it is, but the bottom line is that Jesus' love is for every single person on this universe, and my job is to represent that love. And so, I can't be intimidated by what people think of me when I want to hear their story and I want to know who they are, because even when I was living in darkness, that was part of my DNA. That was part of the DNA that I knew that I believed in Jesus, because Jesus wanted to know people. You think about these stories in the Gospels of Jesus, and something that I learned about as a child with Zacchaeus is Zacchaeus being a tax collector. Jesus had a following. There was people attracted to him that wanted to know who this guy was, whether they believed in him or not. They wanted to know who he was. And this guy climbed a tree to get a viewpoint of him. And out of all, I believe there was probably hundreds of people there. I do. I believe that there might have been, and theologians could be like, no, there was only 7 there. But I believe that there was hundreds of people there. And the fact is, the matter is that Jesus looked up at a guy that was up in a tree that he probably read his face recognition and probably had heard about Zacchaeus, because Zacchaeus was a cheater of taxes and took advantage of people. And Jesus was a part of this community. And Jesus was the type of person that wanted to know about the community and know about people. And probably, in my mind's eye and my mind's thoughts, probably got a grasp on who, tell me about this person. Tell me about, I hear about this Zacchaeus. Who is he? That's who I see Jesus is. It's that he saw him and he's like, that's Zacchaeus. And he went to Zacchaeus and he said, I want to come to your house and hang out with you.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with you.
And then what did the religious people say?
What are you doing?
You're eating with these sinners?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing, man? Why you come hang out with us? And I'm not a theologian by any stretch of the imagination, but I know in my own personal life, sometimes the people that I really want to hang out with, I'm like, why are you investing so much time into that person? Why don't you hang out with me? I got my crap together. I feel like, why don't you hang out with me? Man, they're being Jesus, dude. Mm-hmm. They know Jesus knew what Zacchaeus was capable of, and I don't know what happened to him, according to Scripture, but I have to believe that Zacchaeus was telling people about Jesus. Mm-hmm. I mean, how could you not, man? Mm-hmm. Right. If the dude's coming into your house, hanging out with you, how could you not want to talk about it? So again, come as you are. But know who Jesus is, because you ain't leaving the same.
Yeah. And once you get saved, you've got the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So man, for that 10-year period, like, you had the Holy Spirit.
Without question. Without question. And I had his hand over me, man. Mm. I had his hand over me to know that the part of my story of having that foundation was, I still heard his voice. I just didn't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be in the wilderness, man. Yeah. I wanted to do whatever I wanted. But I still had that inkling of him drawing me in, whether it was a random YouTube video of a worship song that I had led worship with that was popular 10 years ago, mm-hmm. that just randomly popped up, the algorithms or whatever else like that.
God uses it all.
Absolutely.
When I was a boy, I wanted to be older so that I could do things that older people did.
Yeah.
And then when I got older, I wanted to be rich so that I could do things that people that didn't have to go to jobs could do. And now that I'm a father, I look back on that time and I realize that it was so stupid, because in order to do what you want to do, you have to do what you don't want to do. Like Travis preached on it, like, if you don't do what you know you should, right, it won't do you any good. Well, that's a tough lesson for a kid that just wants to be left alone and be able to do what they want to do. And, I didn't live 100% like that as I got into adulthood, because I quit drinking and using drugs. So I was in this weird place where I was like not drinking and not using drugs, but I was still going to the Down Under pub trying to pick girls up on Friday night or Saturday. You know what I mean?
Just found another vice.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think that we talk about like a God-shaped hole that everybody has in them, and like you're empty and you can't fill it up. There's no amount of drugs or women or alcohol or things that you can, hobbies, being busy, whatever it is, right? You can't fill that hole, and God fills it. I think that if you have a behavior or something you're struggling with, you can remove it, but you've got to put something else in the place.
Yeah, well, that's a good word. And I, just in my studies too, of just like the Old Testament, just the beginning of time, it's just the fact too, where you think about Adam and Eve living in this most purity. Like, could you imagine what the air smelled like breathing it in?
I think there was more oxygen then.
Well,
too,
I mean, dude, we can die. I mean, of course, you think about the purity in general, but the fact of the matter is that there was a sprinkle of the serpent saying, "Why don't you try this?"
God didn't really say. Did God really say?
What are you talking about?
No, that's what Satan's saying. Yeah, did
See,
God
man, you got
really
me confused. You look at you, man. You're a good voice of the serpent. No, but like for real, like I mean, just even therein of the creation of everything, there's still distraction, and so with that being in our lives now, there's beauty happening around us, but we cannot deny that there's distraction around, and we have to have our guard up. Mm-hmm. So let me say this. Those were the last thing I say, and then you can close it out. But as a guy that came to Wilderness 2 years ago, broken, a week sober, from giving up the booze and stuff like that for that season of his life, meeting his wife, going on the first day in October, getting married in October, having a daughter in October, December, I am preaching at this church this Sunday.
No way.
Yeah.
I heard about
Very
this.
excited.
And so,
I heard about it last week.
I heard about it.
And so, this week has been an ass whip of all kinds of deals. Like I even told my wife last night, I was like, I know that you're frustrated, and I know that I probably failed you a lot, but I need some grace with your tone and just, how we communicate. That's probably going to be over the top for you because I'm getting my ass whipped right now. But I know what God's going to do through this. And I know the intimidation. So we're talking about, Revelation 12, and that's exactly what we're preaching on. And that's exactly what Shanna Garcia, who's goes to seminary and is a woman in our church, is going to be co-pastoring or co-preaching with me.
Yeah. Okay.
And man, it's going to be powerful. And I just appreciate you guys' prayers for me. Because even now, sitting here having this conversation, it's like Satan's like, you're gonna be preaching something over the top. You're gonna fail. You're gonna blah 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 blah. And
Did you really say shit?
Yeah, trust me, that is not what he's whispering. But you know what I'm saying. It's God's doing big things, fellas. And I want to say something to y'all. Like even just preaching on Sunday mornings, this podcast. I know it's a grind. Keep it going, Trey. I know you're putting in a lot of work. Keep it going, man. It's powerful. It's powerful.
Right on.
Pat, keep it going, man. I know you're tired. I know I know that crap's hitting the fan in different ways of all of our lives, but your consistency to this is going to be so impactful. Even if there's 15 people that listen to this episode, keep it going, because the wave of conversations that both of you men, that when I was sitting there with Garrett saying, man, those guys, it would be hilarious if they started a podcast. And then a week later, Trey, starting this podcast, 2 gods, 1 pod, or whatever it's called.
Bro.
No,
you can end on that right
No, but I'm saying I'm starting this podcast, and I can show you the text message. Whenever you send it a week later, say, can you believe how the Lord works? And he goes, that's fantastic. So, I love you boys so much. I love you.
We love you, man. Thanks for coming on. And this has been another episode of 2 Dudes, 1 God Pod. You almost messed me up.
That's not the name of it.
2 Dudes, 1 God Pod.